Thanks to our Patreon members for helping to make this episode possible, and we're now available on all the major podcasting platforms. You can find more information at the links below. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to do a special topics here because I've received some questions about information technology, artificial intelligence, these sorts of things about which I in no way want to consider myself an expert. But again, I'm a philosopher, study philosophy, and what's fascinating to me is the degree to which early relative to the development of the technology, thinkers like Jean-Francois Lyotard and Gilles Deleuze, amongst others, Foucault even, had talked about the kinds of information technology environments in which we find ourselves, even though they had been talking about this 50 plus years ago, 60 years ago, 40 years ago, in that time range. And so I thought it would be an interesting position from which to reflect upon the values that have come to dominate parts of our society as they both predicted and expected, and then as a reflection on their work, what that might mean. And the proximate cause of these reflections was questions about Techno-Feudalism, which is a concept that's been around for a while. Yanis Varoufakis, I'm sorry, these Greek names, I apologize, I always mispronounce everything. Yanis Varoufakis has been a promoter of this idea. He's written an interesting book on the subject. And so it was in pondering the nature of the argument around this concept of techno-feudalism that made me reflect on, in part what this is a concentration and a generalization of the experience of modern technology as predicted by some of these earlier thinkers. Again, in this case, all three French, Leotard, Deleuze, and Foucault. And the reason I encountered this is one of my mentors was a translator of Jean-Francois Lyotard into English. And so then I read very early, relatively speaking, his work, and particularly the postmodern condition, in which he talks about this, and is really, it's shockingly prescient, is what I would say. You just become, every step of the way that he argued is what we're seeing. And so I wanted to start with sort of Lyotard's critique, if we get from the introduction, first section of the postmodern condition. Deleuze sort of expands on this, and then what this actually says about where we are with techno-feudalism and what that might actually mean, and the counter critique of this. So to begin with, Lyotard's ideas are pretty clear and, again, pretty prescient. So the book was published in 1979, I believe. So he had been writing it for a while, though. So anyway, so that's pretty early on when you think about, we're reflecting from 50 years later now. So 55, 60 years of forecast, and then here we go. And he says, one, that knowledge would become basically data driven, like it would become informational. It's not longer, it's a consumption product. So it's for buying and selling rather than for enlightenment or improving the quality of your life or being experiential. And this, if any idea sticks with you, and certainly one that's been sticking with me and then comes and goes, is the degree to which we've become convinced that the things that are stored in these big data centers and cloud all over the world and using all this power and so on and so forth is meaningful. But this is a change in outlook. What used to be meaningful is those things that we carried with us. It was our experiences, our knowledge, our education, our outlooks, our sensibilities that we emphasized. And somehow we've slowly been switched to, you don't need to know anything because somewhere out there's a machine that knows that. And once you begin to think this, now it's possible to mediate between you and the things you want to know. If it's in your own mind, then the mediation is you. If it's out in the world that you experience, then it's sort of a shared product of where you're interacting and what's happening to you and the experiences you have every day. So that, if nothing else, I think that was a hugely powerful insight. And I remember first reading that and going, no, I don't really understand it. It's only the education that the world has provided over the last, 30 years that has sort of driven that home. And now I'm like, oh, I think I know exactly what he was talking about. Isn't that amazing? Then the second one is that, therefore, once knowledge and information becomes transformed into this sort of product, then it all becomes about efficiency, utility, profitability, performance, measurability. All of that becomes absolutely central to everything for everybody. Like that seems, it's not true, but it seems as if this is what matters. And so that's, again, a big shift. Like a novel, there's nothing efficient about a novel. They're not efficient to write. They're not efficient to publish. They're not efficient to distribute. They're not efficient to read. But a great book has this incredible power to transform. But it's not, there's nothing, right? How would you define this as efficient, right? Like it is, and it's certainly not that profitable. So you're like, and so that becomes this incredible sort of transformation of how we even think about ourselves and our world. We keep asking, is it efficient? Does it have high utility value? Is it going to generate profit for me or somebody else? And once your mind is always asking that question, well, game over, right? Like as if these are important questions, when often they really just aren't that important as questions go. And in fact, they're often just silly. And they're, anyway, I'll talk about that in a second. Finally, this combines sort of the notion of knowledge as power, but notice it's not the knowledge that you have that's power, it's the knowledge that somebody else has that's power. And therefore, it's who controls the information flows that has all of the power. And of course, this is where Yanis Varoufakis and the sort of techno-feudalists come in, as they say, okay, now we've entered this world and we know who controls these information flows. It's not us. It's not, a lot of times it's not governments. It's these huge tech companies, primarily American, that have these big data centers and these big AI corporations in China or in the United States or, whatever. And they use this to exert all kinds of control. But that control is not to help us. And this is the idea of techno-feudalism, which is kind of, Leotard didn't call it that, but I think he would be like, oh yeah, okay, I can see where their argument is coming from, which is to say, hey, we live in a world where everything is mediated by technology. That mediation has to be paid for. So either you're paying for it in subscription fees or you're paying for it when they steal your data. You don't necessarily get a lot in return for that. And so basically you're forced into these relationships in which you have no choice. Basically, you have very limited to no choice. And you're being exploited by rent-seeking feudal landlords. And so you're not having a negotiated agreement. You're not getting paid for what you're doing. You're not getting paid for the goods that you provide. You're just getting the opportunity to participate. Like, oh, we'll let you farm this land, but we get to take a bunch of the food you produce. So if you want to farm and you want to eat, well, then you've got to make that deal. You have no choice. As opposed to, would you like to own some land? Would you like to farm some land? Would you like to be productive on this land? Sell it for yourself and then make what you want. So part of the argument of the techno-feudalism is this becomes, there's a few massive corporations that control all these systems, and they seek rent rather than trying to do anything to help you be productive or to increase the quality of the world or to distribute goods or anything like that. In fact, quite the contrary, they want to interfere with all that so that they have the capacity to mediate between what people want to do and their access to these sorts of digital goods that they feel are necessary. So this is sort of the core ideas here. And so now it's an important moment to reflect. So part of the techno-feudalism is, I think we can just say, yeah, this is accurate. For instance, because I've been traveling a little more, And because I do not like having a phone. I often don't have it with me. It's always turned with no ringing, no buzzing, no anything. It makes no noise. And so I was like, oh, do you want to travel? I just went to the UK not too long ago, and I had to download an app to get a pass that allowed me to register for entering the UK. This is not a choice. This is necessary to go. And it was an app. And so I'm like, wow. So you either have to be in the Android universe or you have to be in the Apple universe. You have no choice because you have to have an app to download to participate in this pass that you have to have. And then when you get a plane ticket, we're just going to give you an e-ticket. There is no physical ticket. You have to use an e-ticket. Everything, and you're just like, you have to have a phone to travel. Functionally. I mean, maybe you could get by without one. I'm sure that the Amish have worked out some system, but they make the tax so high to try and do something without the mediation by this technology that you basically have no choice. So you're forced into these environments, which is part of the point of techno-feudalism. Serfs were not asked, hey, how would you like to participate in serfdom? Right? This was not like an exciting opportunity has come to your neighborhood. It was hey, you have absolutely no choice in this. So here you are in this land where you're being forced to participate, often against your will, certainly against my will, because I do not like to interact with technology that much, and I certainly don't like the phone technology at all. I still don't understand why this is so popular, but it is, so there you go, that's the world we live in. Anybody who started a business will know this, where it's like, oh, you want to take a credit card? Okay, everybody's using credit cards. Why is everybody using credit cards? Because the whole system is encouraged this, right? Like, here we go. You're like, the people have been encouraged to do it, so now you have to do it pretty much. And so now you're like, okay, now we've got to pay rent seeking to the people who are intervening in the payment system. I mean, why it's not just free? Why every government just doesn't have a tap system? It's like, oh, look, these are debit cards. It's free. We give you a machine. It's just like taking cash. If they want you to go to a cashless society, great. It's just like taking cash. Here's a free system. You get the system. You tap it. You get the payments. Everything is groovy. Absolutely not. We know this. So anytime you try to do anything, we realize like how every store you go into, they get your phone number, get your email address. Like, oh, we're going to send you a text. We're going to say, like, no, don't do this. I don't want to do it, but we're virtually forced to, which means now you have to have the subscription to the Wi-Fi, or not the Wi-Fi, to the cellular. Now you have to have the phone. You have to have the sign up to the Google Cloud or the Apple Cloud or somebody's cloud, right? It's like, it's not a question. You just must. It's like, oh, but if I don't want to, what happens? It's very difficult to avoid. Not entirely, but it's just they make it extraordinarily difficult. So one last example is, in the name of all this is theory. They keep trying to tell us that this is efficient. It is not more efficient. And I'll just give you a simple example. I was talking to somebody, because I'm an immigrant now, and she had gotten her carte séjour in France, which is your right to stay, kind of your French green card, if you're in the United States, the equivalent thereof. And she's married to a Frenchman, and 25 years ago they had been in France when they got married, and she went down to our local mairie, and she got her card, and she said it took about half an hour, fill out the paperwork, talk to the people, give them their ID, took her fingerprints. And about, 2 weeks later in the mail, she got her card because they had to make the card. It took a little while. Great. Today, that process is months long, requires multiple filings on the computer, and is no longer done locally, but we have to travel an hour away and make an appointment. So it takes vastly more computer time, vastly more. So you got people managing the databases, people managing the computers. You have to upgrade the computers all the time. You have to do all. And I can't see what the system has gained. Like, why not having a small, nice lady at the place who just enters the data in every mairie in France and then sends it to the central government is less good than this just massive, unbelievable bureaucratic system that's been built up. And by the way, it is not decreased immigration, so it's not like a stop immigration system. It's a just data collection, organization, for what ends, right? Like you look around and you can't see, like, people are really pissed off about immigration. Well, some people, their whole party pissed off about immigration in France, as in many other places. So it's not in any way helping with the immigration problem. It's not like super efficient at tracking me. Why? Like what? Like your local mairie knows where you live. They have your picture. They actually know who you are because it's your local mairie. Why isn't this a good system? But it's the centralization, the control. It's just what Leotard was talking about. It's what the techno-feudalist people are talking about. It's this outlook and mindset that says control, centralize, make big, then you have the power. And then in theory, the government has been convinced, and this is in every way all over the place, that this is giving them power. But of course, what it's actually doing is transferring the power to the big data companies who actually manage this and sign the $100 million, billion-dollar contracts and provide the computers and provide the operating systems. It's all just been sucked away. So now the governments aren't even in control anymore, because the systems are not theirs. They don't know how to operate them. They don't have the expertise on site. They are chained to, enslaved by, under the thumb of, the Microsoft. There's one of the Nordic countries, I forget which one, is trying to say we're not going to use any Microsoft products. And this is like turning out to be almost impossible. And it's like, yeah, like even a government of a country can't get their bureaucracy to not have to subscribe to all these incredibly expensive, by the way, incredibly inefficient. These are not efficient, light, small programs. These are huge, data-sucking, inefficient, computer-destroying, constantly upgraded pieces of technology that make it absolutely necessary for them to spend hundreds of millions and billions of dollars a year. So again, techno-feudalism. Even governments have become feudal tenants on the land of the big tech lords. So that part of it is both predicted, by the way, and I think that the techno-feudalist analogy is to a certain extent accurate. However, going back to Foucault, going back to Deleuze and Lyotard, I think the problem I have, or the hesitation or desire to complicate the situation, which of course is the hopeless bias of all philosophers, is let's make this more complicated rather than less complicated. So maybe I should reflect on that for a bit. But what the trick is to make us think this is how it is. This is not how it is. This is not the world as it necessarily needs to be, or even as we need to understand it. And so it's this trick that's been played. And slowly, I think people are unlearning the trick. I see little signs here and there of people going, hey, no, I'm not doing this. So one of the things is there's a bit of a move. It's a bit, bit style, but also I think a real response of younger people getting flip phones so that they can get text messages, they can get passcodes if they need them. So it's like, again, you have to have a phone, but which doesn't really allow you to have social media. And so they're like, oh, I don't need all that stuff. In fact, I can't have it because I just have a simple flip phone, which allows me to text people if I need to or call people. But other than that, I'm good. So that's one beginning to say people go, oh, I just don't need all this. I don't want to participate in all this. I want to get away from all this. Another one is the return to physical media, which you're seeing all over the place, where people are going, wow, all these subscription services, all these data collection, all these streaming services, they're getting too complicated. They're getting too expensive. They don't have enough selection. They don't have what I'm going to do? I'm going to get some CDs. I'm going to get some vinyl. I'm going to get some DVDs and Blu-rays. And all of a sudden, there's this huge spike, this big return to the physical media, because they're like, hey, this is all wrong. Like, this is not working. It's actually not providing value to my life. It's just, again, that we got told and we became convinced that it would. That if you let me mediate between you and your music, you'll have a better experience. And it's like, you know what? I don't want somebody I don't know. I don't want an algorithm on a computer mediating between me and my music. I want my friends and myself to sort of mediate between me and my music, right? That's what I want. But we've been told no, no, no. And now people are going, well, you know what I think? I think that's not a good idea. I think I want to be the mediating element here. And that shift, I think, is quite profound in its implication because of the nature of the lie. And Deleuze is very good on this, as is Leotard, that this was never true. This was never, this transformation of knowledge in this sense was always a kind of robbery, a kind of isolation of the individual, a kind of strip mining of human experience to allow corporations to do this. So it was not an additive, it was a subtractive and a walling off, and to which necessitates that some of the human experience, some of the interactivity, some of the sensibility of being human was being removed from you and then trickled back to you and sold back in drips and drabs. And that process, again, which is what they predicted and what we've seen happen, is neither natural nor necessary nor even helpful. It's more like a card trick. And like I said, when people start going, I think I'll get a DVD and watch movies that way at home with my friends, notice that nothing like huge has changed. Like, this isn't a rebellion against capitalism. It's not people going, oh, I rebel against, trade. You're like, no, someone made a movie. They made some money selling to sell it. Actors got paid. There's copyright, right? So, but it is a rebellion against this version of it. It is a rebellion against saying, oh, mediation is life, basically. And that if I don't get mediated stuff, then somehow I'm missing out. And what I've also experienced, and this is because I now live in France, is that in France, this is, having just complained about it here, it is absolutely, turned down by about 70% compared to the United States. A lot more cash economy here, a lot less emphasis on technology, a lot less use of social media. Not that it isn't plenty, but it's just turned way down. A lot less sort of constant badgering with the tech, and it's just less. And more emphasis on interactivity, more emphasis on like local bookstores. They still have lots of local bookstores and lots of local music stores, as opposed to everything being done online. Like the victory of Amazon and online retailers like Walmart in the United States is not nearly as comprehensive. And also like the super, super large supermarkets, they kind of exist a little bit in France, but they're pretty rare. Like in France, people still go to their butcher, to their baker, to the local cafe, to the market, outdoor market, to get their fresh vegetables at a much, much higher rate than you would see in the United States. And so that notion of going, oh, look, if you just get your loyalty card and think that you can get everything you need in one place, and you do this huge shopping and you just fill your car with crap and then take it home, that your life is better than if you just talk to people that you know, and you go to the butcher once or twice a week, and you go to the vegetable market twice a week, and you go to the bakery every day, because of course, that's why bakeries exist, is so you can have fresh bread. That sort of your fromagerie, right? Those relationships. You don't want a loyalty card. You want to go to some place where the people say hi, and they go, oh, look, we got this new cheese and you got to try it. And they hand you some crazy good cheese or terrible cheese. It doesn't matter. Like they're thinking of you. Oh, look, here's some cheese. Try this. You might like it, right? That's a loyalty. It's a human interaction. It's not a loyalty card. And of course, loyalty cards then become these just designed to treat you like a white rat and motivate certain behaviors and disincentivize certain behaviors, and so on. In fact, one of my experiences when I was in the United States is, again, as I always in coffee shops, people kept trying to sign me up to their stupid loyalty programs. And I'm like, I am never going to do that. I just want coffee. I don't want to keep track of how many coffees I've had. I don't want to have a card in my pocket that I have to remember to stamp. I don't want you to have to remember how many I've bought. I don't want to be in a computer that tracks me for how many I've bought. I don't care. Don't do this. I just leave me alone and give me coffee. In France, I don't think I've ever encountered. Have I ever encountered that? I don't believe so. I don't think I've ever seen a single loyalty program at a coffee shop or at a cafe. You just come in, you buy stuff, they leave you alone. It's great. It's spectacular, right? Isn't this what we want? And then you know the people there, and you chat with them about their kids. This is better in every way. But again, the loyalty card allows them to intervene between you and your coffee, right? It seems small, it seems trivial, but there it is. And so I think one complicating element is to say, this is a card trick. This is a psychological transformation. This is what Orwell was talking about. We've just been sort of mentally colonized. They actually don't have that much power. It's just that we continually cede it to them. And we just feel like, well, this is just naturally how it is. But I think there is beginning to be some pushback, and I think it's a very easy pushback because you get no benefit. I guess that's what I would end up saying. There is no benefit to all of this. The benefit is that they've walled off things. They've seemed to wall off things that you want, but it's actually a trick. Probably you don't really want that much what they've walled off, and you could probably get it in other ways much more fulfillingly. Not always. Like, again, trying to travel without it, you're like, it's just like screwed today. Maybe in a year or two, this won't be the case. So that part of it, I think, is a mental trick. And if you stop and think about it and go, really, what do I get from this subscription fee? I pay a lot of money to listen for an algorithm to feed me music. Is there another way to do that might be more life fulfilling? And once you start asking those questions, you go, oh yeah, I could have records. I could have CDs. I could listen to the radio. Radios still exist. All these other ways of doing the same thing and having a very different relation with things without the mediation from these giants. This other part where I'm hesitant is, and you see this particularly in the Janis, again, I'm sorry, I keep messing his name up. In his book on Techno-Feudalism, he argues this is a different kind of capitalism. And I think this is incorrect. This is an expression of the rent-seeking that capitalism always strives for. So, and you can see this like in car companies, I think, because, sort of the iconic industrial thing was trains and cars, right? Like, okay, we have big factories. They use a lot of metal. They make physical objects that everybody uses. We can see them. We can feel them. We understand this, right? Lots of people make things. Big factory, industrial revolution, great. So car companies have a totally and completely different set of motivations than their financing arms. Right? So like you have the financialization of a car company is like, oh, what we want to do is make money giving loans to people because those is wildly more profitable than making a car, right? And car companies work this out. That's why most car companies develop these massive financing arms. By the way, hello, 2008 financial crisis. And what they recognized is like, hey, we don't want to make cars. That's expensive. We have to employ all these people. We have to produce a good that might go out of fashion. We have to invest in, machine tools. That's all boring and expensive and capital intensive. Oh, we hire a few people with some computers and some paperwork and a few lawyers, and we can just charge ridiculous interest rates. And we can charge fees on top of the interest rates. And that's huge. That's beautifully profitable. And so you can look at corporate earnings for the major American car companies. And there's a lot of years when all or most or the majority of their not income, but a majority of their profit is not coming from the car side, the manufacturing side. It's coming from the financialization side. And so the notion that this is somehow new or this is radical transformation in capitalism is not true. This is a tradition right at the core of capitalism, that this notion of going, if you want to maximize return, what you want to do is form a monopoly and then rent seek just as hard as you can. That was recognized by Locke, a couple of 100 years ago. He's like, here's the problem. As soon as you do this, they're going to want to form a monopoly and they're going to rent seek like mad. This is their goal. And so you have to try and prevent that. But it's extraordinarily difficult. What information technology has provided, I think, and this is definitely arguable, argue amongst yourselves. This is not a firm conclusion, but I think it's simply made that much easier to accomplish, and they've been much more successful at it. And a lot of legal laws have changed, a lot of, growth, internationalization that creates these huge players has helped a lot in this. Would help the right word there? It's helped them be hurtful. How about that? So that we're in a system where the monopolization and the power of monopolization has been sort of accelerated or leveraged by the information technology. So I would say it's not the information technology that has driven this. It's that nascent and always present impulse in the capitalist system has now been harnessed to this power that lets them do what they'd always been trying to do, but do it so much more efficiently and so much better. And so with those complicating elements, I do think there is a fair critique of the modern information environment that uses the sort of techno-feudalism idea. However, I think it exaggerates the power and the extent to which it actually really matters to people. And it overlooks the fact that this is not in any way a new expression of a capitalist idea. It's simply just because of globalization, because of the information technology that allows for globalization, what had always been a nascent attempt has just now become much more successful. They're much better at doing what they'd always been trying to do. Standard Oil Company, the history is clear on this. For monopoly, rent seek like mad. And a final note on artificial intelligence, because I was just having this conversation about this. These large language models know nothing. This is one of the interesting things. They have nothing. They have no experiences. They don't know anything about the world at all. They're just giving you probabilistic responses based on scanning large collections of language databases, which is phenomenal. So on one hand, it's phenomenal what they can do. It's also phenomenal what they absolutely cannot do. And what happens is we're right back to Leotard. Leotard is saying, look, the trick is to make you think what AI can do is really valuable and important and is going to replace everything. That's the trick. It's not true. It's not that it can't do anything. It's not that it won't do some things. It's just that what happens is because it can do certain things, we say those things are really, really important. And then we all go, oh my goodness, look, all this really, really important stuff. But if you stop and say no, why is that important, right? Maybe I don't care about that. Maybe I never cared about that. It's like, do you see the difference? So this is the distinction that's always being lost, is to say just because AI can do it doesn't mean it's really important and valuable, but we're being told that is what it means. So far, it is certainly not proving to be the case. And final point on this, because this is one that comes up with information technology all the time. It's a bit in Techno-Feudalism. It is you just hear it all the time. You hear it with AI. Is it like, oh, this is going to be, again, we're going to replace all these workers and it's going to be more efficient. Again, just back to what Leotard was talking about. This is why I think, Lyotard, love Leotard. Define efficiency. It's not going to be more energy efficient because these AIs are absolutely destroying the energy grids all over the world because they are sucking up so much power, and there's no evidence they're going to use less. They're going to use vastly more amounts of power as people try to do more and more complicated things with them. So if they are successful, the power implications of this are so vast that all the big data companies now are experimenting with fusion power, experimenting with nuclear power plants, putting wind, they're trying to do everything they can to find sources of cheap, sustainable power because they're like, this stuff just is massive, massive energy sucks. So one, is that efficient? No. This is define efficiency. No, this is wildly, wildly inefficient. Like it's just so, shockingly inefficient. It's crazy. Two is everyone's like, oh, look at this. Like you'll be able to replace phones, people help you. Now you just get these assistants. Of course, we all know how these AI assistants are working just the same way they've been working, right? Like, oh, you have a question, you ask the question and it gives you some circular, paradoxical, unhelpful answer. And then it says, okay, I'll give you to a human. So what did you do? You wasted your time. You wasted a bunch of computer power, like a bunch, like unbelievable sums. The company that is, subscribed for this AI service just paid a bunch of money to have the AI service, and you end up at a person anyway. So this is unbelievably inefficient and also, by the way, not economical. So far, no one has cracked the economics of this. It's not like these companies are spending cash. They're not running massive surpluses. They're running massive, massive deficits. And what they're saying is, if we spend billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, at the end of this, we'll have a product that we can sell for trillions of dollars. It's going to have to be trillions at this point. And that's going to revolutionize everything. Or, like so much other information technology, we're going to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars to get something that's less good than what we had before, and it's going to be massively energy inefficient, and it's going to be super irritating, and we're all going to hate it. And it's like, yeah, so, so don't be tricked by this efficiency stuff, because the notion that, this data centers are not that aren't part of basically it's the idea that they are not part of the industrial world. They're absolutely part of the industrial world, massively energy intensive, massively, rare earth metal. So the mining is going furiously. Everybody's like, we don't mine much coal anymore. It's like, yeah, we mine less coal, but look at all the mining we're doing on all the rare earth minerals right now. It's becoming like a geopolitical, strategic element in everybody's thinking. It's because it's an industrial product. Just because it's small, but look at these data centers. There are these massive buildings. You think of old hill forts. Like if you wander around France, there's all these big forts with walls and, castles. And you're like, whoa, imagine how much labor went into building that to protect, a region or a trade area or an agricultural valley or something. Well, this is just like these data centers, these vast, multi-acre, energy-sucking, computer-filled data centers that they're building as fast as they can. They're making chips as fast as they can. This is industrial revolution stuff. This is not post-industrial. The post-industrial, that's a lie. They're lying to you. It's not true. Absolutely industrial on a massive, massive scale. And so much so that, again, they're in the U.S., they're just wrecking the energy grid. They don't know how to get as much energy as they need, and they can't get as many chips as they need. So mining furiously, building furiously, manufacturing furiously, energy consumption furiously. It's so efficient. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Like this is industrialism with computers, but it's still just industrialism. So don't be tricked on that one. So a bit of a wander there, but I did think this was so fascinating because these elements, these ideas that were raised, more than 50 years ago by people like Foucault and Leotard and Deleuze and other thinkers, reflecting on the nature of what happens with information when we think knowledge is information and when we change our relationship to it, that is the core. It's not about all this other stuff, which is just industrial technology and governments losing their minds and bureaucrats running wild. That's all great. That's all predictable. Hello, George Orwell. But it is that trick, this fundamental core trick that Foucault and Lyotard are talking about, where they try to change our psychology to make us think that the things that computer knows matter and the things that we know and experience don't matter. So I would say be suspicious of that. The things you know and experience matter way more than anything that is stored in all of the databases and all of the AI clouds and all of the information processing centers in the entire world combined. That's the core idea. This is, I guess, I'm a hopeless humanist, so that's the humanist message. You matter a lot more. Your knowledge matters a lot more, and there's no other way to reproduce or store or have that. It's not a thing. It's you and our experiences and the human existence and interactions with the actual world that are difficult to mediate, and so the data people try to continually convince you that that's not true, but it definitely is. By the way, I should mention before I leave, I just forgot. Hello, Jean Baudrillard, right? Who's sort of winning the day. Progression of the Simulacra, one of the most important books probably written on this subject. So lots of French thinkers have been thinking about this for a long time. It's not new. It's not a new aspect of capitalism. It's not post-industrial. It's not information technology. It's a consistent, predicted, known, unpleasant, and hopefully soon resisted expression of information technology meets capitalism in a world that sort of has become convinced that information is knowledge and hence not ours, but somebody else's. Thank you very much.